Hello, welcome everyone. We might kick off. Thanks for coming. I'd like to first acknowledge that I'm hosting this event on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and I would like to acknowledge their elders, past, present, and emerging, and thank them for looking after this place we call Banyule for tens of thousands of years. If you're on different country and would like to acknowledge that, you can put that in the chat function. So I'm Ali Hall. I'm from Banyule's environment team, and I'll be facilitating this session tonight. So this session is part of a series of 3 webinars, which were designed to help us launch our community climate action plan, which has a goal for a carbon neutral municipality by 2040. It's a mouthful. This plan will help guide us to contribute to reducing our emissions in a bunch of different ways. The other 2 sessions looked at e-bikes, which we held last week with Darebin, and next week we'll be having a discussion about community-led energy with representatives from Pingala, Hepburn Wind and Renewable Newstead. They're going to give us an idea about how we might think about localising energy production and investment in Banyule. You can register for that at Eventbrite, and we'll drop the link in the chat. And that should be a great conversation for us to have. So tonight, we'll be talking about how we can start or how we can accelerate our transition to all electric homes and away from fossil fuel dependence. This session will finish up no later than 8:45, and the session is being recorded for those who couldn't make it to tonight's session. You'll notice that you're all on mute and you're not on camera. You can still engage through the chat and the Q&A function. General comments can go into the chat, but if you have a specific question, pop it into the Q&A. In the background there, we have Mickey Liu, who's Banyule's Community Energy Officer, and he can answer all your household energy questions through that Q&A function. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our fantastic panel of experts. So from Renew, we have Damien Moyes, who is Renew's Policy and Research Manager and leads Renew's advocacy policy advice in the areas of renewable energy, energy efficiency, demand management, water conservation, and efficient transport. And he also lives in and has converted 2 electric homes. Welcome. What's your favourite thing about living in an all-electric home?
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, everybody, for having me tonight. Favorite thing, I guess, I mean, I work in this space, so I like playing around with technology and looking at different kind of systems and looking at efficiency kind of opportunities. But I guess probably my favorite thing is not getting a gas bill. I'd have to be honest and say that's probably the thing I like the most.
That is fair. Thank you, Damien. We also have Dean Lombard. Dean is Renew's Senior Energy Analyst and works with Damien on research and advocacy in the energy market with a dual focus on reforming the energy system to better accommodate renewable energy and enabling informed choices and better outcomes for regular people. What do you love about all electric energy efficient homes?
Well, I'm not fortunate enough to live in one, so I aspire to one. And the thing I least love about a sort of non-all electric home is that extra $1 a day I have to pay just to have the gas on. It really adds up.
Yep. That is also a fair answer. Thank you. We also have with us Michael Copsey. Michael is president of the Banyule Clean Energy Group and advisor to environmental think tank Beyond Zero Emissions. And he lives locally in his all-electric solar-powered home and helps residents and organisations transition to renewable energy technology. What's the best thing about your place, Michael?
Thanks, Ellie, and yeah, great to be here. So, I mean, I'm going to have to go with Damien there. So it's got to be the financial benefits, really. So, yeah, spent years, you know, battling with spiraling energy bills, and being in an all-electric home. Yeah, you know, we finally feel like we have control over our bills, but we also have a pathway to zero bills. So that's got to be the big one. But I asked my son this very same question earlier on, and he said, "Daddy, it's not all electric, we've got water."
And he's right. So
yes.
Good on him.
Yes, indeed.
Perfect. Thank you. And lastly, we have Richard Quiche. Richard is an engineer, consultant, and author with particular interest in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And he was the lead author of the Zero Carbon Australia Buildings Plan and has written a book called The Energy Freedom House, which is published by Scribe. And Richard lives in Melbourne with his family in their zero carbon home. What's the best thing about living zero carbon?
Hi, Ellie. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. The best thing for me is just that satisfaction that comes with having simultaneously zero energy bills, lower environmental impact, and greater comfort. It's a win-win-win.
Really is. Thank you for that. Thanks, panelists, for being here tonight to help talk through some of the questions that have come in. Thanks to all of you participants for filling out the questionnaire, which was part of the registration. And this has allowed us to tailor our discussion and ensure we're covering the right topics for you. So first up, Damien, why are we going all electric? Doesn't natural gas have less emissions than brown or black coal?
Yeah, it's kind of the main question, really. Why are we doing this? Why we've been talking about this increasingly over the last, I guess 5 or 10 years. There's a bit of complexity in there, I guess. It's still true that when you just look at electricity, supplied by the majority of the big coal generators in Victoria, and you compare that just straight to gas, just on the pure emissions factor basis, gas is purportedly lower than emissions in electricity, but there's a lot of other things going on. First of all, now our electricity grid is actually decarbonising. Last year we generated about 24% of our electricity in Australia from renewable energy sources. So the electricity emissions factor is actually decreasing, and the gas one is likely to increase. In fact, we think it's understated for a number of different reasons. The uptake of solar, rooftop solar on your own homes obviously gone off in the last 10 years. So now you have the ability to provide your own electricity, which is basically zero carbon, and reduce that emissions factor even further. And then you've got these other modern, efficient electric technologies, things like reverse cycle air conditioning, heat pump hot water systems, these things which are much, much, much more efficient and therefore lower energy use than delivering the same amount of space heating or the same amount of water heating with a gas appliance. So you throw those in the mix as well, and they significantly reduce carbon emissions as well. So when you kind of couple those three things together, and in terms of the trajectory, where are we now and where are we going? We're not going to a future where gas is going to be emissions free and electricity is going to get worse. It's the other way around. We're going to be, at some point, very high penetration of renewables across the grid, and gas, unfortunately, from an emissions perspective and a cost perspective, is getting worse and worse.
Perfect. Thank you. And Michael, where would we start? There's obviously some cowboys out there with pretty varied opinions on what's best. Where can we get impartial advice if we're only sort of starting this journey?
It's a great question, and one that we struggled with when we started this journey many years ago. It seems now, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago. There is a good option on the table actually from the get-go. So Banyule City Council are obviously offering a free energy audit at the moment, and I think that is a really good place to start to get a good appraisal of your home and your options, taking into account your specific circumstances. So that's something that we did. We actually used local expert Alan Cuthbertson, who, if you're Banyule based, I'm sure you'll know. And he went around with his thermal camera on a very cold day, actually, to have a look at where we were losing heat in our house. And that got us on the road. So we're on a tight budget. We're like most families out there. We don't have much disposable money to spend. So we're after we were after very, very good advice. To make high value, high impact changes in the best way possible. And an audit is definitely something that I'd recommend. There are, of course, some excellent groups out there, so of which I am the president of one. So I'd also recommend knocking on our door. We can certainly help you out. Arrange for visits to all electric homes in Banyule. And there's no substitute really for actually going into an all electric home, of which everyone is different because everyone has a different approach. Everyone will have a different budget. So I think that would be a really good option for anyone starting out on the journey. As a local group, we're also there, with you from the start of the journey to the end and beyond. So we're not going to go anywhere. Social media wise, so one group that I've got fantastic value out of is My Efficient Electric Home. It is an amazing resource, and I would highly recommend anyone starting out, wherever you are on your journey, to get onto that Facebook site. It's an amazing resource. Renew, actually. So Renew has some really good resources, which I've tapped into over the years. So yeah, there are cowboys out there, and it is important to be wary of them. But if you are engaging with a service, such as the one that the council offers, or with Alan Cuthbert's, then there are good people out there who can do energy audits. And having a look at these places, you can get off to a pretty good start.
Perfect. Thank you. It's a range of options. Love it. Before we get to the stage of spending money on upgrading our house, Richard, are there ways that we can just change our behaviour a bit to help with the cost of our energy bills and our household emissions?
Behaviour. Probably improving your house is a lot of little things and a few big things. And in terms of behaviour, probably there's a bunch of significant things. The cliched ones are, turning off light bulbs and changing the set point on your air conditioner. But there's some other simple ones that don't cost too much. One I'd really like to highlight is going and getting a very low flow shower head. Some are better than others. It's not strictly a behavioural thing, but you can talk about the behaviour of going and getting it and taking the trouble of doing it can make a big difference in reducing your hot water use. Other behaviours that sometimes I see not done, but so to look at things like just being conscious of using window coverings properly. People might, for example, leave their blinds open at night in winter when lowering them would act as a blanket over the window. So there's a couple of little ones.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And I guess this is in the same vein, but Dean, with these kind of actions, is there some other stuff that we should look at to make our house more energy efficient before we do some of those bigger changes?
Okay, that's better. Yeah, thanks. There are quite a few things that you can do by spending a very small amount of money compared to some of the bigger changes. And, as Richard sort of said, lots of behaviors. I mean, some of the very low cost things you can do are just like, having curtains that can block out a bit of heat or keep in the heat. Doing some simple draft proofing stuff, which can be really cheap or even free, to like block gaps under doors and around windows. Some of the other behavior sort of stuff can be just like thinking about, do I really need to use a tumble dryer, or can I actually dry the clothes inside this time? And thinking about just the way that you use appliances. And look, another really sort of moderate cost, but very quick impact one is to make sure that your insulation is up to scratch. Ceiling insulation is not super cheap, but it actually pays back really quickly because it keeps a lot of the heat in and then it keeps a lot of the heat out. So for a couple of $1,000, if you own a house, it makes a huge difference. And they're all really, I guess, all of those things, so many of those things are on that theme of, recognizing that it's actually heating and cooling that's one of the biggest energy usage in our homes. And if you can actually just keep the heat that you make from your heater in the house, or keep the heat from outside out, that's a huge bonus for energy usage. So those simple things around drafts, insulation, yeah, window coverings, maybe a bit of shading on the outside to stop or even growing plants that stop the summer sun hitting windows. They all make a huge difference with the amount of heat that gets into your house in summer or the heat that escapes it in winter.
Perfect, thank you. One of the things that we got a lot of questions on was around gas appliances and what the alternatives are. Richard, can you tell us a little bit about heat pumps, how they work for your hot water, and how comparable they are to gas hot water?
Sure. Okay, first of all, the heat pump as a mechanism is the same underlying mechanism as everyone's got in their refrigerator. Okay, it uses a pump and some vapor to move heat from one place to another, and a heat pump hot water service does that by extracting heat out of the ambient air and passing it into the water. And it's very efficient at doing that. The reason why it's seen as really a positive thing to do is, like most heat pump applications, you can move more than 1 unit of heat with each unit of energy, with each unit of electricity. So, so compared with a resistive element, old-fashioned electric hot water, a heat pump is typically between 3 and 5 times more efficient. So 1 kilowatt hour of electrical energy will typically deliver 3 to 5 kilowatt hours of heat energy into your hot water tank, and that's a really good thing. So how does it compare with gas? Well, there's a lot of different units on the market, and they broadly comparable in terms of their basic function. I mean, electricity goes in, hot water comes out. One of the key things to compare them on is how quickly they can recover the heat. That is, how quickly they can warm up again if the tank were full of cold water. And some are better than others, but the good ones are extremely good. They can generate around about 90 litres an hour of steaming hot water. And that's exceptional, especially when coupled with a very low flow shower head. It means that you never run out of hot water. So what you really care about with hot water is just that you don't run out. Yeah, choose your shower head and your hot water together, and a medium priced, good quality heat pump hot water will cost more upfront, but it'll pay itself back in avoided energy costs over its life, and you can expect them to last at least 10 years. A good one should last 10 years or more.
Perfect, thank you. And Damien, that was going to be sort of my next question, but I guess in living in an all-electric house with a heat pump for your hot water, how is it? Do you have hot water on tap? Can you have the 15-minute showers if we're allowed to waste that much water?
Yeah, you can. I've got 2 kids. They're getting older, and showers are getting longer. Yeah, at the end of the day, a heat pump hot water system, at the end of the day, it has a tank. So it's the way it kind of works on one level is like any other system with a tank. So you're pumping that heat into the tank. You're getting the tank of water up to 65, 70 degrees. It sits there. It'll sit there all night till the next day, and it'll lose a bit of heat. But you shower in 40-degree water, give or take. So the fact that you've got a tank means that, yeah, you can have, and then you can have different tank sizes. You can have a 100-litre tank, you can have a 400-litre tank. It depends on, you should size them relatively well to the number of occupants in the house. But yeah, effectively they work in that sense no differently than a gas storage hot water system with a tank, or an electric resistive storage hot water system with a tank. So the place we used to live in, we had one, and we had a very small solar PV system. The heat pump would come on at 10 a.m. in the morning, heat the water up. Would take less than an hour in summer, would take about 2.5, 3 hours in winter. and then it would switch off and it wouldn't start again until 10 a.m. the next morning. And even when we had showers the next morning at like 7 a.m., the water was well warm enough, warmer than we needed it to be to have those showers.
Perfect. Sounds pretty good. On to the cooking. So obviously everyone loves cooking with gas, and everyone remembers those electric stoves you used to find in youth hostels that took about 3 hours to warm up your can of baked beans or whatever delicious meal you were having that night. Michael, in your experience, is induction cooking better than that? Please tell us it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've got a Bosch induction cooktop ourselves, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. So yeah, the main things are really that it's almost instant. So they're much more responsive. You know, we've done a test, and I actually did a test yesterday just to make sure my stats are accurate. So we can boil up some water in about 2 minutes on the high setting with our induction cooktop. So yeah, they are incredible. They're also safe, so you know you don't have to worry about there being a hot surface or a flame. Yeah, they're very easy to clean. But one of the best things about it that I've liked has been the smart aspect from a technology perspective. So you can set a timer on it. So if you want to boil an egg, you can set it to go for 3 minutes. But it also tells you, our Bosch one tells you how much energy you've used as well, which is really good, just to make you conscious of energy usage. What are some of the other great things? So it's auto sensing. So as soon as you take a pan away, it will switch off. So you know, there's no worrying about having left the stove on. So you know, I was a bit dubious initially, having moved from the gas cooktop, but it's been amazing. And you know, I've been into restaurants. I was trying to remember the name of one that I went into a few months ago. Well, probably more than a few months ago now with the lockdown, but Estelle, that's the one, I think. And I was having a chat with the restaurant owner there about the benefits of moving over to induction cooktop technology. So I'm a big fan. Yeah, they are amazing.
Perfect, thank you. And Richard, where would you suggest we start if we're sort of looking to change over from the gas oven and stove? Where do we get that info, and what should we consider when purchasing?
So we're talking a retrofit scenario, existing house?
Yeah, retrofit, I would presume.
Yeah, it's really straightforward. Go and have a look at them in Harvey Norman or Good Guys and find something you like, and get it arranged and have it installed. Some of the challenges, cookware. Not all cookware is compatible, and the easy test to find out if your cookware will need replacing is the fridge magnet test. Get any old fridge magnet. If it sticks to the bottom of the cookware, it's going to work on the induction. If it falls off, it's not going to work. So things that are aluminium based or copper based will not work on induction. So that it needs to be steel based or iron based. But most new cookware these days, even if it's made of aluminium, has a steel mesh pressed into it. So they're usually going to, anything made in the last few years is going to work fine. So that's one thing. One thing to look out for is some cheap ones are noisier. They may make a buzzing noise or have a fan noise, but that's no different to other electric cooktops. So you might want to see one in action, ask to see it in use. So as a rule of thumb, you get what you pay for in life, and the better ones are probably going to be more reliable and long lasting, and have better features and yeah, give it a try. I'd add to what was said before. And one of the common concerns about induction is, I like to do wok cooking. Well, what we use is just a deep skillet. It does have a flat bottom, but tall sides, and we don't have any trouble doing wok type dishes in there. It's sufficiently powerful that you get that heat in there really well. It's responsive, and yeah, no compromise really.
Perfect. That's what we want to hear. Thank you. Thank you very much. Damien, once we install all these electrical appliances, do we need to do any upgrades to our switchboards or anything like that to provide that extra electricity?
Yes and no. There's probably a couple of points to touch on around that. So one thing with a lot of the kind of major appliances these days, induction cooktop, which is, it's very efficient, but it can be high power for short periods of time, or reverse cycle air conditioners or heat pump hot water systems. Generally, when they're installed, the electrician will want to run a sort of a separate cable back to the switchboard and have a separate, what they call circuit breaker, like a switch in the switchboard. And sometimes switchboards are full and they don't have any space left for those, in which case maybe an upgrade might need to be done, but hopefully there's some slots left. So that's one issue, but often isn't, there is slots there, and so it's not an issue. The other issue is when you move to all electric, you're obviously, all electric homes are efficient, but they can have, again, high power draw for short periods. And different homes, depending on their age and where they are, have different kind of capacities of connection back to the local grid. And we still find for most people, most members that we know that have moved to all electric homes, they still can do that quite easily without having to upgrade either the connection into the property or change over from single phase to three phase. We generally don't find that's necessary, just moving to an all electric home. But, for some places where maybe an old one, they may have had a very low connection to the grid, potentially that's possible. Another possibility is down the track, they might want to be all electric plus have an electric car as well, and maybe charge that car relatively quickly. And that kind of opens up a new can of worms around, well, maybe I need an upgrade there. But yeah, generally find that in most circumstances, it's okay, and you don't kind of need to spend huge costs there. But for smaller number of cases, you may do.
Perfect. Thank you. And Dean, what about if there's an electrical failure? What do we do?
It's true. If there's an electrical failure, then the induction stove won't work, and that's a bit annoying. When there's electrical failure, it's always a bit annoying. The lights don't work, the TV doesn't work, the internet doesn't work. What do you do? Some people might cook on the barbecue if they've got a gas barbecue. Some people might order in. Obviously, if you've got gas, you can use your gas stove. But I guess the question I would ask myself is like, well, how many times do I have an electrical failure? And do I really want to spend whatever, $400, $500 a year just so I can cook that one night? That's what it comes down to. The answer might be yes, and then it might be, well, okay, then do it. But I guess for me, and probably for a lot of people, it's like, well, if 1 or 2 nights a year, maybe I'll have a salad or I'll order pizza. So I think that's what it comes down to. And, flip it around. We had a big gas failure, 20 years ago or something, and that was also inconvenient. These things don't happen that often. And do we want to insure ourselves constantly against them happening once or twice? That's a question. If you've got solar and a battery, and you've got it set up right, then it won't even matter if you've got electrical failure. So, there's a range of options, but I would sort of go, how much do you want to pay for that little extra bit of lack of inconvenience?
Perfect. And hopefully we get a more stable grid one of these days.
Yeah, well, there are fewer and fewer outages each year. We actually do have far fewer electrical outages in most places than we had, than we've ever had before.
Perfect. Thank you. The other one that we got a few questions about in the gas section was heating. So, Richard, could you tell us how you heat your place, and what are the options for replacing specifically a the gas ducted heating systems? Oh no, can't hear you for some reason. You are off mute, but we can't seem to hear you.
Is it better?
That's better. Thanks.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the option that suits most of the time is using split systems. And it may sound surprising, even alarming to some people, but those split systems that a lot of people just think of as air conditioners are actually very efficient heaters. So they have, to some people's mind, a bad reputation as energy hogs, but I think it's unwarranted most of the time. So to directly answer your question, Ellie, we had an old ducted, well, it was complicated. We had one console gas heater and a ducted system as well, but we ended up replacing that with an arrangement of split systems through the house, where we have 7 inside units and 2 outside units. So whenever you have split systems configured such that one outside unit serves multiple inside units, that's called a multi-split system. And it's not what most people think of with split systems, because most people think, you know, one outside unit, one inside unit, but you know, that's the common way to do it. But multi-splits are a good way to think about split systems for heating and cooling when you're looking at a whole of house approach. So yeah, that's the way I do it. We've been very happy with the result. We use a Dakin split system, nothing fancy, just the regular mid-range Dakin multi-split arrangement. And yeah, and although not all my energy use in the house is for heating and cooling, just to put it in context, we with that heating and cooling as part of the picture, we got our overall energy use, the gross consumption of the house, down by 3/4. So now that's before considering solar, and that 1/4 remaining is completely offset with solar. And another way of looking about it is the amount that a lot of houses can reduce their energy consumption is to get the energy consumption of the house down to around about the amount of energy used by a typical conventional hot water system. So that's a reasonable goal, to heat and run your entire house off less energy than your hot water uses.
Wow, that's extraordinary. Cool, thank you. And so split systems for someone who might be retrofitting already has that ducted heating. If someone's building new, would you suggest the hydronic style heating for them?
No, hydronic is beloved of many people in terms of the comfort level it gives, and some people have reservations about splits with regard to comfort. But there are a couple of points to note. Hydronic is only useful for heating. So in a warming climate, you're always going to need another source of cooling. Whereas think of splits as something that may give you cooling, and the heating gets thrown in for nothing, literally. It's doing both roles for no extra cost, and doing it well. The other point about the comfort that people like from hydronic, there's more to comfort than just the air temperature. So a big part of making a house work comfortably with split systems is making sure that it's done in conjunction with an upgrade of the thermal envelope. So it's making sure the draft proofing, insulation, glazing is done. And so when that's done, the amount of work the splits need to do to keep you comfortable is much less, to a degree that might be surprising, because not only are you reducing the amount of energy that you need to achieve a certain set point temperature, but once that thermal envelope is improved, then in a heating scenario, you don't need that set point temperature to be as high because the surfaces around you are warmer, and they're contributing to that total comfort picture. So yeah, splits when used for heating in conjunction with an efficient thermal envelope make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks very much for that answer. In terms of solar, Dean, a lot of Banyule is covered in big, beautiful trees that we love. If your roof is completely sort of shaded or part shaded, is solar worth it for you?
That's a tough question, actually, and it really depends a lot. If your roof is largely shaded, then it probably won't actually work for you. If your roof is partly shaded, then it really depends on, can you locate the solar in the part that's not shaded or that's not shaded very much? And you can actually specify a solar system with different types of inverters called microinverters that help a better deal with partial shading. But yeah, really, you'd really need to get a solar installer or like a independent sort of solar assessor to have a look at the shade on your roof different times of year and sort of figure out, well, what's the actual potential for generation on this? Because the real value of solar is that you invest the money and then you actually pay it back through reduced energy expenditure, and ultimately you get free energy, really. And if that's not going to work out for you because of shading, then there's not much you can do about it. You can look at other options, like, maybe, if you really want to try to lower your emissions, buying green power or invest in a community energy project of some kind. But there are limitations if your roof is heavily impacted by shade. But it probably, if you're really keen on solar, probably does pay to get some independent advice on what the shading is like on your roof year round and what it means for you, because you might find that a smaller system installed the right way with the right equipment will actually get enough benefit for you, but it's just impossible to generalize it. I don't know if Damien's got a few other thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I guess the ability to have solar systems in potentially shaded situations has gotten better and better over the years. So yeah, like Dean was saying, you can use optimizers or microinverters, and that deals with those shaded situations quite well. It's worth remembering that solar panels generate electricity for two reasons, not one. They don't just generate because the sun directly shines on the panels. It's also because of the solar radiation kind of in the atmosphere too. So they will still generate. You don't want to lose a lot of your generation, obviously, on an annual basis. If you're getting winter generation, I mean, in winter, about 1/8 of your generation comes in winter compared to the rest of the year. So winter shading is not too bad. You'll lose a bit there, but it's not too big a deal for over the course of the year. If you're starting to lose a lot also in kind of your mid seasons, kind of spring and autumn, then you might really be starting to eat into the generation and wonder about the value of the project. But yeah, I mean, for us, we do kind of thousands of consults for people looking at solar, and it's getting rarer and rarer that we find a site is absolutely unsuitable because of shading.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Sorry, we've just got a question in on the Q&A that I might just put to the panel as well. They're asking, most of the energy generated by solar panels is during the day, when not many people are usually at home unless it's 2020. Plus, battery is still costly. What's the cost-saving equation for solar there, and how do we utilize our solar?
Yeah, I can probably help there. I've come up with a good rule of thumb that may help people understand the economics of solar. If you take the upfront cost expressed as dollars per kilowatt of capacity, so let's say a 5 kilowatt solar system costs you $5,000, which would be at the low end, then that's only $1,000 a kilowatt. Divide that number by about 300, and that's a number that applies for Melbourne. So 1,000 divided by 300 is about 3 and a bit So that gives you approximately the lifetime cost of that energy. So think about investing in solar as buying 20 years of energy in advance. And the question then becomes, how much is that energy costing? So that simple equation of taking the dollars per kilowatt of capacity and dividing by 300 is a way of roughly calculating that cost of that energy generated over the life of the system. And when most people do that calculation, they'll find that it comes out much less than they thought. So in that scenario where most of the energy is going to the grid during the day, that's not wasted and it's not costing you money. You're still making money. So a typical household would find that their cost of generated solar is around about 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's generally well less than half what the government's making the industry pay you for that energy. So even in that scenario where you're exporting most of your energy, you're still making money. The economics of solar are much better than many people think.
Great. Thanks for that. Dean, please.
Yeah, I was going to add, like, this is also where when you're sort of planning ahead and thinking, okay, I want to go for an all-electric home, it really helps this equation, because there's a whole lot of energy use that happens sort of independently of when you, the occupant, actually wants to use the thing. And hot water is a good example. You can time your hot water to like heat up in the middle of the day. So even if you're out of the home, you're still using your solar. And there's a whole lot of other stuff, like, especially with modern appliances like washing machines and dryers and dishwashers, a lot of them can be timed to operate during the middle of the day. So when you're sort of if you're shifting to an all-electric home and you're going, okay, my heating and my hot water, and then you're looking at appliances that can take more use of your solar when it generates, and you can actually change the balance in your favor quite a bit.
That's great. Thanks. And then that last point, Damien, how practical and accessible is that battery storage option for your average household, or when will it be so?
Yeah, well, practical and accessible. They're practical and accessible now. If you put one in, it will store solar energy and it will discharge that energy later on when you need it, or you can charge it from the grid or whatever. So there's no real problem with the technology. Obviously, the latest technology is the kind of the lithium type technology, which you can charge those batteries very quickly, you can discharge them very quickly, you can take them down to almost kind of zero and they'll still work really well. So there's no real barriers with the technology as such. It still just does come back to kind of what's the cost of it. So if you think about a solar battery system and you're looking at the economics of it, basically the solar is doing the majority of the heavy lifting in terms of the bill saving. It'll do 80-90% of the bill saving will come from the solar. The battery will help add a bit more to that, but how much more it adds depends on how much are you realistically going to use that battery every day on average. Ideally, you want to basically charge and discharge the battery kind of in a full cycle every day and get that use out of it every day for 10 years for its kind of asset life. The reality is that unless you've got a really large daily usage profile, that you won't get anywhere near kind of 100% use out of the battery. When we sort of do that modeling for people at work as part of the consults, and what we often find is they put in a Tesla Powerwall or one of these bigger kind of batteries, and you do the modeling, and actually the battery only discharges about 25% of the energy on average. So yeah, it works better if you've got a larger usage. It works better if you're offsetting a higher retail tariff. That always helps. And it also helps if you can get a subsidy from somewhere. So some states have better subsidy programs than others. South Australia has the best still in the country at the moment. It's had up to about a 50% rebate on batteries over there. The Victorian government's had one for a while, but it's been a decent size rebate, but it's been very exclusive. They haven't offered very many rebates per year. They are increasing that number, and so potentially that'll offer a bit of opportunity, but they're still going to be a bit hard to get, I think. So yeah.
And please, Michael.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally agree with Damien on that. It's for most people, most use cases, batteries are just not there at the moment. But I visited a couple of residents in country Victoria recently, where in their case, actually, for their use cases, a battery is a pretty good idea. So one customer in Broadford, the other out in Healesville, in bushfire-prone territory, and with the grid being quite unstable, where they're getting regular blackouts. So in their specific circumstances, a Tesla Powerwall with blackout protection, or one of the other batteries which has got blackout protection makes sense, but really for most people it doesn't stack up.
Thanks, Michael. And Damien, Michael just kind of touched on something else that I wanted to ask, which was if we put in a battery to our house, are we all automatically safe from blackouts?
No, that's not a standard functionality of an offer, but it's certainly one that you can have. So not all batteries can do that. Many can. It's just a matter of simply saying to the supplier when you're getting quotes, look, I want the ability to operate independently from the grid when there's a blackout, to have that protection. So you just need to ask for that. It's a little bit more expensive, not particularly much more expensive to get that functionality. And I mean, really, if you're going to go the distance of getting a battery which is still fairly high cost, then you probably want to look at that too, because it's not going to add too many more dollars on to get that functionality.
Thanks. And Michael, so we've just moved in to the new house. We're ready to start this transition to all electric. How do you suggest that we sort of manage the financials of that? Obviously, we can't do it overnight. There's some expensive aspects. What's your advice for how we get started?
Yeah, so I think it probably comes back to that first question you asked me, really. So, using that audit to inform your next steps. And I like to see things, from a project perspective, a financial benefits perspective. So looking through that audit and developing, either with that assessor or with someone else, a project plan, and really not rushing headlong into anything. Figuring out where the low-hanging fruit are, and devising a bit of a timeline in terms of at the moment this year, budgets, we just bought a house, budget's a bit low. I think we'll target the energy efficiency savings first of all, and some of the other low-hanging fruit, and then work forwards from there. But I see things, and on our group is very much financial benefits and emissions reductions focus. So you've got to be cognizant of what your payback period is, and what your ROI is. So not rushing into things, having a good kind of project plan, and taking some good advice would be my recommendation as a first step.
Perfect. Thank you. We've just got a couple more questions coming through. So they're not in the same topic, but they're going to be all over the place. But here we go. Richard, in terms of heating, we were talking about before, is efficient wood fire heating ever going to be an option that's better than having gas or electric?
Not in my opinion. I think heating with wood fire is more problematic than many people realise. One way to look at it is this, that every litre of flue gases that goes up the flue has to be balanced by a litre of cold air that's drawn in from outside the house. So anytime a wood fire unit, or an open fire for that matter, is operating, it's acting as a draft amplifier. So fires are draft amplifiers. They're literally sucking cold air into the house. So for every unit of heat that you perceive as coming out of that fire, you should offset that in your head with the cold that it's bringing in to the house. So there are a small number of wood fire units that don't do that, but they're very rare. In my assessment, having assessed hundreds of probably over 500 houses in Victoria in the last 5 years, I've only run across one house that had a wood fire with an external air source, and another house that had a wood fire that could be retrofitted with an external air source. So yeah, if you absolutely must have a wood fire, then you should choose one that has an external or facility for an external air source. That is, it can be fitted with or come standard with a pipe that carries air in from outside through a dedicated tube, and so the air that is used in the combustion of the wood comes directly from outside rather than being drawn from the room. So that then makes it balanced. So you've got the air coming from outside going up the flue, and that's a completely separate pathway of air to what's in the room. And when that's happening like that, there's that draft amplification doesn't happen.
Perfect. Thank you. So that finishes the questions that came through in the registration. So if anyone who's listening has another question they would like to ask before we finish, pop it in the question and answer, and we'll see if we can get to it. First, I want to ask all the panelists, for the people out there who are listening, all very keen to start this transition, just any extra advice you might have on how we start, where we go for information, and what are other considerations we might be missing here. Damien, I'll start with you.
Yeah, one thing I kind of like to say to people in our energy consults is, and this has been particularly this year, given that it's COVID and we're all working from home and we're all even more familiar with our houses than we otherwise would be, is just have a look around, particularly in terms of heating and cooling. I mean, that's, heating, cooling and hot water, those are the big three. But in terms of heating and cooling, it's not just about the appliance, it's obviously about the building and the performance of the building shell as well. And just, walk around the house, or when you're kind of working in the house, think about, well, what are the most frequented spaces in the house to start with? Where do we all, as people, hang out in which rooms, and where don't we? And therefore, which are the more important rooms to actually have a stable temperature inside them, either in either the peaks of winter or the peaks of summer? And then, yeah, have a look around for some of those simple things you can do, particularly kind of your draft ceiling stuff. Maybe it's curtains, maybe it's door snakes or what have you, but just try and kind of build up that sense a little bit of how's this house really kind of working from a thermal performance perspective. And then, obviously a lot of people will want to go and get kind of professional either auditing advice or get professional energy efficiency installers to come in and do certain things as well. But just taking that time a little bit to become a bit more familiar with how that works in your home can then start to really shape how you move forward from there.
Perfect. And Michael, where did you start, or what have you got left to do?
So I think we were very unconventional, actually, with where we started. We moved into our home and had been renting for a while, and we were desperate to get solar. And we moved in, slapped a solar array on, so 5 kilowatt array, which cost us $5,500. But that immediately saved us, roughly $1,300, $1,200 to $1,300 off our annual electricity bill. So that's where we started. Is that what I'd recommend? If I had my time again, I'd probably say get the energy appraisal done, get the audit done, have a look at, in retrospect, the front door of our house was a disaster, and we didn't really notice it until the energy audit was done. So there was a two degree difference in the lounge area after fitting a proper seal around that front door. So the energy efficiency and the draft proofing is very cheap. I mean, I was looking through my figures actually before this, and I think we spent about $350 maybe $400 with sealing kits from Bunnings, and I think we got one from EcoMaster as well to do some of the doors. So that's really high value. There is another segue though with draft proofing, which obviously we all got to know about over last summer. It stops, bushfire smoke from getting in, or it doesn't stop. It really slows it down and really stops it in its tracks. And I felt so lucky during that period because we had such slow ingress into our house. And we've got an air quality monitor. So I was actually taking readings inside the draft-proofed area of our house, in a non-draft-proofed area of our house, and outside, and there was quite a significant difference. And I've actually got some images somewhere on my PC that I could probably share, but so it actually makes the inside of the house safe and breathable. After a while, you will need those air purifiers, with HEPA filters, to finish off the job. But for a $350 to $400 investment, which was our 1970s house, which is very typical of around where we live. That's a fantastic investment when a lot of people have problems with the bushfire smoke just coming straight in. And even if you've got air purifiers, it's difficult to fight it if it's coming in that fast. So there is another angle as well as reduced bills. It's keeping your house safe, keeping your kids safe.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for mentioning that as well. And Dean, what would you suggest? Where do we start?
Yeah, look, I've got two main things really, and I think the first one really is, and it's really to emphasise the points others have already made, is absolutely first step, get that thermal envelope of your house fixed up, because once you've got insulation and you've stopped the drafts, then you can actually figure out how much heating you need. Until you do that, you don't know. And I think that one reason that ducted heating is so popular in Victoria is because the houses are so poorly insulated that you actually need all that heat coming out in every single room just to stay warm. But when the house is actually well insulated, you don't actually need heating in every room. You're heating in a few main rooms, like Damien and Michael was saying before, is really all that you need. So I reckon that's really the one first step. And then the second thing I would say is plan. It's really important to plan. If you've decided, okay, I want to move towards an all-electric home, I can't afford to spend it and do everything at once, but I've got a plan. And that's so important because the most cost-effective time to actually upgrade an appliance is actually when the old appliance needs replacement, because then you're really only spending maybe a bit extra to get a modern, efficient electric one. And especially with hot water systems, people normally replace hot water systems in a mad hurry as quickly as they can because they want to have a shower. And if you've got a plan and you've worked out what you're going to get when it's time to replace it, then you can actually do it. And I've spoken to so many people who had a vague idea about, I'd like to go all electric. And then when their hot water system went, they just weren't organized and they just needed it. And they just stuck in another gas one because the plumber had it on his truck and that was it. And so many people fall into this trap. So I think it's just really important to plan so that whatever happens, you're ready to move when it's the right time.
Cold showers really focus the mind, don't they, Dean?
Oh, yeah.
And Richard, what would you suggest for us to start?
Yeah, I've got a couple of sort of messages. Firstly, I'd like to focus on comfort. A lot of people approach the whole thinking about electric homes and efficiency through the lens of either just reducing energy or reducing costs. Where to my mind, having assessed, like I said, over 500 homes, 90% of those people were motivated first and foremost by comfort. And of those 90%, most of them were motivated by winter thermal comfort, thinking in a Melbourne context. So most people would engage me to help improve their homes because they were cold. Not because they wanted to save money, not because they wanted to save the planet. So that underscores an important point, that the thing, and this built on what Dean said, that the things that make your house a better thermal envelope both make you comfortable and save you money. So the two things go together. So so broadly, the things that are involved here, you can classify as either active or passive. So the passive things, the draft proofing, the insulation, the glazing, they should come first. And then the active things, the lighting, appliances, standby, heating, hot water, they're really important, but they're not the things that make you more comfortable. Well, they make you more comfortable, but the point is that the passive things make you more comfortable without needing any energy. So the second thing, I'd encourage people to engage in a community of interest around this subject by joining the Facebook group My Efficient Electric Home, which has already been mentioned by Michael, I think. I help moderate that group. As of yesterday, we had about 22,000 people, mostly in Australia, but from around the world now. Yeah, so, and finish off by just emphasizing Michael's point. It's a journey. And it took me 7 years to turn my home from crap into really good. And yeah, so the important thing is just to start that journey. Have a plan, have a map. The assessment will give you that map, and then just allocate your part of your budget over a few years, and your house will be so much better.
Thank you. And I might just ask another one from the audience, just because we've got a couple of questions that have come through about in-wall insulation and specifically retrofitting when you've got that brick veneer. Is that going to be worthwhile, or is it best to focus on that draft ceiling and roof insulation at least first off? Richard, I don't know if you have.
Yeah. Houses built before about 2003 are much less likely to have any insulation in the walls, because 2003 was when the 5-star mandatory minimum energy rating system came in Victoria. So if you're lucky enough to be in a brick veneer house with a tiled roof, then that's the best combination to allow for retrofitting of insulation in the walls, because in a brick veneer house, there's a course of bricks and a gap before the stud frame and then the plaster. And if you can push some tiles, don't do this yourself, but a proper insulation installer will access the top of the wall, the so-called the top plate of the wall, by carefully moving some tiles and accessing that top plate. And they can generally put a loose fill insulation material, squirted in through a hose under air pressure, and fill the walls up from above. So yes, so in houses that don't have any existing wall insulation, the walls can be the biggest pathway for uncontrolled heat flow. It's often the case. So yeah, the walls, all houses are different, but yeah, I often see houses where the walls are a very high priority. Doing that improvement is often quite costly and difficult, but when I did it in my house, it was the last major improvement to the thermal envelope. And I remember we did it in about May of 2011 or something. And then the following winter, my daughter, who was at the time about 12, said, "Dad, what's happened? I don't have to get dressed under the doona anymore." and that, bingo, I knew I'd nailed it, that it was a fundamental change that she had experienced, that she didn't have to do what she used to do. Her life had changed for the better.
Well, that is a great result. I myself have a 70s brick veneer house, and that sounds really good to be able to wake up and get up and not be freezing. So thank you very much. And that's it for the questions tonight. Thank you to all of you panelists for joining us, for being here. People who are watching, you might remember when you signed up that there was the offer of prizes. So we did have a year subscription to Renew magazine, or one of 3 copies of the magazine to give away. And you'll find out if you're the winner in your email tomorrow. You'll also be getting a link to a survey after this event. And so we'd really appreciate if you could fill it out. It should only take, 2-5 minutes, and it will help us make our events better and better. I hope you all got out of this event what you wanted to. Please let us know if there's anything else or any other topics you would like to hear about. We can always put on more of these events. Thank you very much, Damien, Dean, Michael, and Richard, for giving up a bit of your evening to come and talk to us. And yeah, let's start this journey and see where we get. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a lovely night.
Bye.
Thanks, Ellie. Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
See you.